Hello and welcome to Auspol Explained, a resource to help you understand everything you need about the Australian political system and how it works. My name is David, your curly-haired host, and this is a 5-part series about the basics of the Australian government. This video in particular will focus mostly on the federal government, though in a later video I will talk about local and state governments. So let's begin with something super important, which is how are laws made? We have lots of laws. How many? Who knows? No one's ever counted. I have no idea. But I do know how they're made. But first off, I must explain the Senate and the House of Representatives. Basically, the Australian federal government has two houses. Houses in governments aren't like places where you sleep, though during some lengthy debates, many politician has had a bit of a nap. Houses are where politicians gather to introduce and pass laws. In some countries they only have one house, or in some very rare cases they have three. We have two houses because it encourages debate and allows for representation of the population through multiple parties. I'll explain how that works in a moment. The House of Representatives, or the lower house, is, as of this video, currently 151 seats large, though this will change over time. Members are elected in what's called electorates, which is a way of dividing Australia into multiple areas of similar population size. So rural electorates are really big because everyone is spread out. And so rural electorates cover multiple towns. Metropolitan electorates, on the other hand, are really small because of population density, and so can cover only a few suburbs. To find out what electorate you are in, go to the Australian Electoral Commission website, aec.gov.au. The AEC is your friend and is the official source of information about elections and voting. So basically, I'm just rehashing what they say. The House of Representatives is where the government sits. Usually, though not always, whichever party or coalition of parties has the most seats is the government, and the leader of that party is the Prime Minister. There are special circumstances where this is not the case, but I'm keeping it short and simple, so check out the other episodes I've made for more details. The Senate, or the upper house, on the other hand, is comprised of 12 politicians per state and 2 each for the Northern Territory and the Australian Capital Territory. Other territories, too small, they don't get any. So regardless of population, Tasmania gets the same amount of senators as New South Wales. The idea behind this is to sort of even out the playing field, because otherwise, if it was entirely based off population, then New South Wales would have more say than any other state. They'd have the most Senate seats and the most House of Representative seats, and poor old Tasmania would be like, oh. A senator represents a whole state, so this means that their supporters don't have to live all in one area like members of the House of Representatives. This means it's easier for minor parties and independents to get into the Senate than it is the House of Representatives. And because of this, this can mean that the Senate has more variety than the House of Representatives. This also means that the government doesn't always control the Senate. In fact, most of the time, it doesn't. Okay, so now that we have these two houses, what do? They introduce bills which they then debate and either reject or pass into law. Most bills start in the House of Representatives, but can be introduced by anyone, not just the government. So if you get one small independent all by themselves, they can introduce a bill. And the government may say, oh yeah, I can support that, or no, I won't. There is an exception to this called Appropriation Bills, which is a fancy way of saying things to do with money. The House of Representatives is the only one that can introduce bills to do with letting the government spend money. Bills are introduced and then they're debated. If more than half of the House votes yes on it, then it is sent off to the other house to be debated. So if it starts in the House of Representatives and passes there, it's sent to the Senate and vice versa. If both houses agree on the wording of the bill, then it's sent to the Governor-General, who gives royal assent, and it is passed into law. The Governor-General is the representative of the Queen and acts on her behalf. which is a product of Australia being colonised by the British. The Queen, or whoever is on the throne while you're watching this, could come to Australia and personally sign bills into law if they so choose, but just lets the Governor-General do that because it'd be just so tiring to fly over every time the government wants to pass a bill. The Queen can't do that. The Queen doesn't want to deal with all that jet lag, and honestly, neither would I. Also, constitutionally speaking, the Queen can deny assent to bills in Australia if she wants. Thankfully, she doesn't, and just leaves us to do our own thing. But bills don't always pass smoothly. There are different groups in the Parliament. So we have the government, which is the largest party or coalition in charge, and then we have the opposition, which is the second largest group. This is usually Labour or Liberal and the National Coalition, and then there is the crossbench. The crossbench is how we refer to all the minor parties and independents collectively. So the crossbench is a shorthand for just other, basically, even though the crossbench is not one thing at all and is actually very varied. Sometimes the government needs the opposition to agree to a bill to pass it. If the opposition disagrees though, the government can try and make agreements with the crossbench. If the opposition and the crossbench both block it, then the bill does not become law. And there is just simply no way around that. The Australian system doesn't have an executive order feature like the US president does. The Prime Minister doesn't have the power as an individual to pass anything. They require the agreement of Parliament to do that. Before a party agrees to let a bill pass, sometimes they will put forward changes, which are called amendments, and send it back to the other house to be debated again. Two things can happen. The changes are agreed to and the bill becomes law, or they reject it and it doesn't. Pretty simple, right? Either you agree, yay, or you disagree, nay. The bill can be reintroduced later on, or it can be just abandoned. So Parliament is often a collaborative process that can take into account the views of multiple parties, not just the one in charge of the House of Representatives. There is a similar system in the States, only they have Legislative Assembly or House of Assembly, and in most states, except for Queensland, the Legislative Council. Also, the territories, the Northern Territory and the Australian Capital Territory, only have a Legislative Assembly, so the territories and Queensland only need to pass bills in one house to become law, whereas the federal government and all states except for Queensland must pass bills in both houses. And there you have it. Thank you so much for watching. In this video, you learned about the House of Representatives and the Senate, and that bills must pass in both houses to become laws, and that the government doesn't always have control over both of those houses. Tune in for the next part of this series where I will be discussing how elections work. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed and learned lots. Comment down below what you would like to learn about next. You can also support me on Patreon and like me on Facebook, subscribe. You know the whole deal. You've watched a YouTube video before. Anyway, I will see you for part 2.